Here are 5 Notion skills you must learn ASAP. As the Notionverse keeps expanding, you'll be required to know more and more skills. You do not want to fall behind. As people are learning automations in Notion Mail, you don't want to still be stuck at the stage wondering how to use filters in databases. The future for this productivity software looks incredible, and I've put together the 5 skills that you must learn in Notion ASAP. If everyone else knows how to do it and you don't, you will simply be less productive than them. You'll work more than them, and you'll be more stressed. Just like the people who didn't bother learning ChatGPT, before that the people who didn't bother learning social media, or before that the people who didn't bother learning what the internet was. Do not fall behind. This is the shortest Notion course that I could make that teaches the 5 most important Notion skills. Skill number 1, filters, group, and sort in databases. Alright, so this is a new page here. I'll just call this dashboard. And if you haven't used databases before and you've been using tables, so this here is a table, then you really need to make the switch to databases. So tables work like this, kind of like in Google Docs or in Word, but you want to be using a database, and a database is kind of like in Excel or in Google Sheets. So we'll click on this one, and then what I'll do here is click on New Table. But what you can do is select existing databases, which I'll get to. So let's click on New Table here, and let's just make this our task list. So task 1, for example, you would be doing that instead of the typical checkbox like this, task 1, tick. The reason we're swapping to databases instead of just doing a list like this is that databases have so many more functionalities, and they can actually talk to other information. So your tasks here, they can talk to your projects, they can talk to your life buckets, and it can talk to absolutely anything you want. Whereas a list like this is literally just text and a tick box. So that's not very useful. Now let's do task 1 and task 2. What I do want to see here though is, have I done the task? So we're going to click on the plus here, and here we're going to select the checkbox. And I'll just make this a spacebar as the name, as it's kind of obvious that it's a checkbox. Now, the first thing that we're going to look at is filters. So there's 3 core database features we want to know. We have filters, we have sort, and then here we have group. There's also other stuff like search and automations. We won't look at that. That's a few steps ahead. We just want to know these 3 first. So we'll look at filter first. Filters are pretty easy to understand. So what I'm going to do here is tick in task 1. And now what I want to do in this task list is say, I only want to see the stuff that's not been ticked in. So I don't want to see the stuff that I've completed. So to do that, I will use the filter feature. And I'll click on filter, and I'm going to say I want to filter this list here by the checkbox. And now I'm going to say I only want to see where the checkbox is unchecked. So now you can see task 1 has been removed from here. So that's how filters work, and we can add as many filters as we want. The next one we'll look at is groups. So what I'm going to do here is right click on the table here and do duplicate. And I'm going to call this all tasks. And I'm actually going to rename this table, rename to uncompleted. So this here is a tab, and these tabs here are the same database, but it's just going to show me the information with different filters, sorting, and groups attached to them. So when I duplicate this tab, what happens is I actually also duplicate the filters. So I'm going to clear and remove that filter. And now you can see task 1 appears again. Now what I'm going to do here under all tasks is use the next feature, which is groups. So I'll click on group here, and I'm going to group this by the checkbox. So the grouping, what it does is it separates these into toggles. So I'm saying I only want to see the stuff that's been checked under this toggle and all the stuff that's been unchecked under here. And because these 2 here are the same database, but it's just showing it differently, if I add task 3 here, for example, it's now going to show up here under the unchecked task 3. And let's say I tick this in, it's now going to be moved up here. And of course, I can uncheck it here as well if I want. And again, with groups in Notion, we can do a lot of powerful stuff. So the last one we have is sort. So what I'll do is go to uncompleted here, and we are going to add another column. And this column here is going to be the date property. And I'll just add in some random dates here. I'll say that's today, say that's yesterday, task 4, and I'll say tomorrow. Now, as you can see, the order here is a bit mixed up and it's kind of confusing for me. So what I'll do is use the sort feature. The sort is just going to say, in what order do you want to show this information? And I'm going to say, I want to order it by the date. So I can either say ascending or descending. So now I'm seeing December 28th, 27th, 26th. So it's put this list here for me in order. And as I add to this list, let's say task 5, and then add a date to it, it will automatically put this in the right order. So I'll say the 29th, and now as you can see, it jumps up to the top of this list. So the first Notion skill you must learn is filters, sorting, and groups. Let me know in the comments if that was useful. The next Notion skill you must learn is the calendar. So I'll do /calendar here and click on calendar view. Now, as I mentioned before, we don't have to click on new database here. Instead, what we can do is select an existing one. So I'm actually going to select this tasks one, and it's coming up here in my recents. It's called tasks, and it's on the page called dashboard. So I'll click on that there. And as you can see, there's this little arrow here, which actually says this here is not a new database, it's linking to another database. And because these here have dates, it's actually showing me that information here on the calendar. So it's showing me task 3, task 2, task 4, task 5, and that is all of these tasks here. And if I were to change anything on here, so let's say this is the 30th instead, because this here is the same database, as I scroll down, it's showing up here now on the 30th. Now this here actually isn't the calendar that I'm talking about. We actually have this button here saying open in calendar. Now you can see these tasks here appearing at the top, task 3, task 2, and task 4. They are these tasks here. So if you haven't used Notion Calendar before, it shows you your Google Calendar plus the Notion Calendar that you clicked open in calendar for. And what we can do here is actually time block. So you can drag these tasks down here and literally draw in when you're going to do them or when you've done them. This here is how I run my entire life. And it's not just a one-way system. I can actually draw directly in here, task 6. And now that I've created this in my Notion calendar, it automatically appears here now on my Notion dashboard. This two-way system of your Notion dashboard talking to your calendar has so many potentials. The two main functions I use it for is time blocking and time tracking. This will be a core skill to learn. The next skill is framework setup. Now this one's a bit different. It's actually not a Notion skill, but an understanding of productivity frameworks. Whether you like the ideas in Second Brain, or Getting Things Done, or Deep Work, or the Autopilot Architect from my Notion productivity course, cough cough hint hint, or if you have a mix of like 10 productivity ideas, you want a productivity framework that you stick to. Then you want to implement that framework directly into your workspace. And since your Notion workspace should handle all of your major productivity needs, tasks, projects, life buckets, time tracking, journaling, all of that stuff, you want to infuse your dashboard with the productivity methods that you've been learning about. So like your to-do list, your calendar, your time blocking, maybe the Eisenhower matrix, avoiding context shifting, maybe scheduling with your energy in mind, the Pareto principle, journaling, time tracking, and Eat the Frog. They're all productivity methods that I've implemented into Headquarters, my Notion template. If you're watching all this productivity content, make sure it actually goes to use. By the way, if you think Headquarters sounds interesting, there's a link in the description. Now, the next skill you want to learn is charts. Charts are going to become more and more important in the future. You do need a paid account to have more than one chart, but if you're new to charts, let's just start with the one chart. So what I'm going to do is go to all tasks here and right click and do duplicate. And this here I will call chart. And what I'm going to do now is click on the 3 dots. I'm going to click on layout, and here what I'm going to do is click on chart. And as you can see, it creates this chart. Now by default here, what it's done is said separate these tasks here based on the day. Now that's not very useful to me. Now these can get super advanced and you can get a metric for pretty much every aspect of your life. I went through this in my Notion Wrapped video. But right now, since we don't have too many properties, we'll make this pretty simple. We're just going to see this chart here as how many tasks have I completed versus not completed. So we're going to click on the 3 dots. And here we can see all of our chart options. Now this might seem kind of overwhelming, but don't worry, it makes sense. So the first thing we'll do is change this to a donut chart. Now, as you can see here, we're still seeing this separated by the date, which isn't what we want. We want to see this separated by has it been completed. So what we'll do here is change this to what to show. And the data won't be the day, it will be the checkbox. So now I can see 80% of my tasks are uncompleted and 20% of my tasks are completed. And then just like the other databases, we can use filters here and we can really dive into our data. Speaking of, link in the description to a time management cohort for busy professionals and entrepreneurs. The numbers are very, very limited. And what we'll do is use your real time tracking data to drastically optimize your calendar. I used to work about 14 to 16 hour days. And analyzing my Notion time tracking with stuff like charts is the reason I finally achieved a healthy work-life balance. Again, fill out the form in the description. Now, speaking of Notion forms, that's actually the last skill that I recommend learning. I use them quite a bit, and if you're a student, if you work at a company, if you work for yourself, or maybe if you have clients, literally anyone can utilize this Notion feature. And here's how to set them up the right way. All you have to do is /form, and here you can create a form from scratch. Now, most of this stuff here is pretty self-explanatory, to be honest, but there is one main thing that you need to learn, and that is how to share the form properly. So here you can add the questions, and there are a bunch of different types of questions that you can add. But the bit that most people stuff up with is how to share it. So once you click on share form here, you want to make sure you change it from who can fill this out from anyone at your Notion account to anyone on the web with a link. Otherwise, you'll spend a lot of time adding people. And then simply click on copy link. Again, there's a form in the description to the time management cohort. If you thought my headquarters template sounded interesting, then click on this video here. That is a full tour of my premium Notion template. It's got over 2,000 users and a 5-star rating. Click on this video to see every feature.